There's a photograph from 1884 that almost nobody talks about anymore. In it, a field in Finland sits under a web of thin wires strung on wooden poles. Below those wires, barley is growing, and according to the man who built it, that barley grew taller and heavier than the barley in the field next door. His name was Carl Selim Lemström, and he was not a gardener. He was a physicist who studied the northern lights. For years, he had traveled to the far north to watch the sky burn green and violet over the snow. And somewhere in those expeditions, he noticed something that would not leave him alone. The plants up there in that short, brutal growing season were growing faster than they had any right to. So he asked a question that sounds almost mad when you say it out loud. What if electricity in the air was making things grow? That single question launched one of the strangest chapters in the history of farming. A chapter that ran for nearly 100 years, pulled in governments and universities, and then vanished almost completely. And today that forgotten chapter has come roaring back in the form of a copper wire and a promise. You have probably seen it, a coil of copper twisted into a spiral pushed into the soil beside a tomato plant. No battery, no wires to anything, just copper in the dirt. And underneath the picture, a claim. And underneath the picture, a claim that this simple antenna pulls energy from the atmosphere and triples the life in your plants. That big agriculture does not want you to know, because you cannot patent a piece of wire. I want to tell you the real story today, not the version designed to sell you a spool of copper, because the true one is far more interesting, and it will actually make you a better grower. Before we go further, if you care about the history that modern farming quietly buried, subscribe to this channel. This is the kind of story we dig into here, and I do not want you to miss the next one. But before we dig into that history, I need to stop, because this is exactly where the real value lies. Most videos about copper antennas will never tell you what I am about to. There's a clean way to separate what is real in this story from what is fantasy. Inside the reference guide I built for this video, I walk through that whole method, step by step. It covers the 3 things you must control if you ever want to test this honestly in your own garden. The exact difference between the historical experiments that showed something and the social media trick that shows nothing. And what copper genuinely does in your soil, which is real, documented, and nothing like the antenna myth. The link is in the description, the companion to everything we are covering now. The link is on screen now so you can find it later. With that in hand, let us go back to the beginning, which is older than Lemström. Long before him, people noticed that crops seemed to surge after a thunderstorm. The fields looked greener and the growth looked faster, and in the 1700s, a few curious minds decided that was no coincidence. A French clergyman named Jean-Antoine Nollet ran some of the first experiments, electrifying seeds and watching what happened. Another French abbé, Pierre Berthelon, built a device designed to drip atmospheric electricity onto growing plants. He wrote that his treated plants did better and people believed him. This was the dawn of an idea that would not die. The idea that electricity is a hidden nutrient, as real as water and sunlight. Then came Lemström, and he did something the others had not. He ran his experiments at scale, in real fields, and wrote them down in careful detail. In 1904, he published a full book on his findings. He claimed that nearly every plant he treated produced a larger harvest, sweeter fruit, and a stronger scent. And his work traveled. Scientists in Sweden, in Germany, and in England began to pay attention. After Lemström, this was not a fringe hobby. It became official business. Between the 2 world wars, the British government quietly funded an entire committee to study electricity and crops. For roughly 20 years, serious researchers ran field trials, applying currents to grains and vegetables. In the United States, the Agriculture Department ran its own experiments in the early 1900s. For a while, it genuinely looked like this might become the future of farming. And then something happened that almost nobody expected. It fell apart. Not because of a conspiracy, and not because anyone buried it. It fell apart for the most ordinary reason in science. The results would not hold still. One trial would show a gain. The next, run more carefully, would show nothing. A researcher would report a wonderful harvest, and another copying the setup would get plain, ordinary plants. The effect kept slipping through their fingers every time they tightened the controls. And here is the part that matters most. After the Second World War, cheap chemical fertilizer arrived, and it did what electricity never managed to do. It worked the same way every single time. A farmer could measure it, repeat it, and trust it. Electroculture could not promise that, and so the field quietly faded away. If you search the serious scientific databases, the trail of published research mostly goes cold after the 1960s. Not banned, not hidden, simply abandoned because it could not earn its keep. So let us come back to that copper coil in the tomato bed. Here is the honest verdict, and I'm not going to soften it. The historical experiments that showed anything at all used real powered electricity. High voltage fields, generators, currents pushed through the air and the soil on purpose. The copper spiral you see online has none of that. No power source, no current, just a passive piece of metal in the ground. Plant scientists who have looked at it are blunt. A coiled copper wire stuck in soil does not meaningfully pull electricity from the sky into your garden, and the dramatic claims of doubling or tripling your harvest have never survived a proper controlled test. One specialist put it perfectly. If a piece of cheap wire truly tripled yields, big agriculture would be the first to fund it, not bury it. There is no patent stopping anyone from studying copper. There is simply no convincing result to chase. But I do not want you to think copper is useless, because that is not true either. Copper does real things in a garden, and this is where honesty rewards you. Copper is an essential micronutrient. Plants genuinely need a small amount of it to grow. For over a century, growers have used a copper-based spray called Bordeaux mixture to fight fungal disease. A strip of copper around a bed really can slow down slugs and snails. So if someone pushes a copper coil into the soil and the plant nearby looks a little better, there may be a real reason. A tiny bit of copper entering the soil, or a subtle change in how that one plant was watered and tended. It is fertilizer and attention doing the work, not an antenna catching lightning. And that distinction is the whole game. This is why the simple test matters so much, and why I put it in the guide. To know whether anything works in your own garden, you grow two groups side by side. Same soil, same water, same sun, one change only, and you count the result honestly. That single habit will protect you from every miracle trick the internet will ever try to sell you. That is the real forbidden knowledge here. Not a magic wire, but the ability to test a claim yourself and never be fooled again. The institutions that study this seriously today all point the same direction. Feed the soil, build the life in it, measure what you do. That is slower than a copper spiral, and far less exciting to film, but it is the thing that actually fills a harvest basket. So the next time you see that glittering coil promising to triple your tomatoes, you will know the whole story. You will know it began with a man staring at the northern lights, asking a beautiful question. You will know that serious people chased it for 100 years and could never pin it down. And you will know that the real power was never in the wire. It was in learning how to ask and how to test. If this is the kind of buried history you want more of, subscribe and stay with this channel. The reference guide with the full, honest method and the truth about copper is waiting in the description below. Go take a look, run your own test this season, and tell me in the comments what you discover.